Hello students, welcome to the Recitals in-Depth. Herein, we will cover the international relations June 2024 current affairs topics in detail. The broader themes which we are going to cover are as follows: elections in important nations, dispute in West Asia, environmental governance, maritime security, issues related to neighborhood nations, resources in Central Asian region, immigration-related news, Indian diaspora, and important reports. Cyril Ramaphosa was re-elected as the South Africa's president. Now, South Africa went into elections in the month of May. This election was for the legislature, and now the presidential elections have taken place, in which Cyril Ramaphosa, who was already the president, he was re-elected. Now this happened due to a turn of political events. Let us understand what this was about. Cyril Ramaphosa belongs to a party known as African National Congress. Now this party is famous for its movement against the apartheid regime that existed in South Africa till 1994. African National Congress was also very cordial with New Delhi because it established its representative office even during the apartheid regime in the year 1960. Let us understand what is the political situation there. So, as we were discussing, African National Congress, that is the party that had majority before the May elections. So, this party had the majority, after which, after the May elections, it lost its majority, and therefore there was a doubt whether Cyril Ramaphosa would be re-elected. However, after the elections happened, it occurred that there was another party by the name of Democratic Alliance. Now this situation is particularly tricky here because Democratic Alliance is a political rival of ANC. But this time it tried to form a coalition with ANC, and this resulted in ANC having the required majority due to the coalition it was involved in. And therefore, Cyril Ramaphosa gets re-elected. Right? So this situation makes this issue a lot more significant from the point of view of our exam. Just to be sure, let us also see what the political and governance system of South Africa actually is. So the political system mainly consists of a bicameral legislature. Just like India, here there are two houses. One is the National Assembly, the other would be National Council of Provinces. Now, National Assembly has nearly 400 seats. And the job of National Assembly is to elect the president. And it is elected on the basis of the party which holds majority within the National Assembly, or rather the coalition party which holds the majority in the National Assembly. So this is the reason that Cyril Ramaphosa was re-elected due to this political system. Also, let us understand how does the governance system work. That is how the business is taken forward with respect to the government. Now, here there is a hybrid system. That is, it is a combination of presidential and parliamentary form of government. Unlike India, which only has parliamentary form of government. Now here, there are two elections. One is for the legislature that get elected to the National Assembly, and then there is presidential elections based on the elected people in National Assembly. They elect the president. So there are two types of election, and the executive is formed by president and the cabinet. This cabinet and president form the executive part of the government, while the legislature follows the parliamentary system. This whole governance would be based on strict separation of powers, unlike in India, where executive is responsible to the legislature and also follows a parliamentary form of government. So there is no watertight separation in India, but here there is observed a strict separation of powers. Now let us also understand within this context, when ANC has won and its member has been re-elected, let us understand in this context what are the relations between India and South Africa. So firstly, we share a huge amount of historical ties. So we must have read in our history books about the Gandhiji trip to South Africa. Here, he was a victim of the racial discrimination and he was upset with it. He was also racially discriminated while he was there and also fought the cases for the indentured laborers that were working. These indentured laborers were almost treated like slaves, and they also had disenfranchisement, which means they were not allowed to vote, they were not allowed to own any property, right? So Gandhiji was a great advocate of upholding basic human rights and right to vote. So this is something which ties South Africa with India. Another thing is anti-apartheid movement. Now, India was one of the first countries to break off ties with the apartheid regime of South Africa. So that happened in 1954. India went on and said that we are not going to hold any ties, whether it is with respect to diplomatic ties, cultural ties, sports related ties, or any other. So they placed a complete embargo on such kind of racial discrimination. And they also, on the international forums, they went and advocated that such racial discrimination should be completely eliminated. And till it is eliminated, let us pose some sanctions so that the government yields. So these are the very two important historical ties and events that bind India and South Africa relations. The other is strategic partnership. Now, after breaking ties in 1954, it was after 4 decades, that is in 1993, that there was re-establishment or rather restoration of ties between India and South Africa. And it was further followed by the Red Fort Declaration in 1997. This was signed between Nelson Mandela and the Indian Prime Minister. So this led to restored framework on which our partnership would be based. And such relations have continued, and there have been multiple declarations going on. With respect to bilateral trade and investment, so India and South Africa trade in a number of goods. With respect to India, India exports textiles, vehicles, and pharmaceuticals, while South Africa is a source of huge amount of minerals for us, right? And a number of companies, whether from India, they operate in South African soil as well. For example, Cipla, there is Tata Motors. These type of companies and many South African companies come and invest their money in the Indian subcontinent as well. There is a defense cooperation. This is based on some memorandum of understanding that was signed in 1996, which was based on sharing of the technology with respect to the defense equipments. With respect to science and technology, there have been a consistent effort to conserve the environment, and therefore you must have read in the news about the cheetah reintroduction program. So 12 cheetahs were transported from South African nation to India's Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. Cheetahs were endangered, were something which went extinct on the Indian subcontinent, and it is an effort to reintroduce them in the habitat they once lived in. Then there is global cooperation. This is global cooperation wherein we talk about South-South cooperation, and they both form a part of many important multilateral organizations. For example, BRICS. This was joined by South Africa in 2010. BRICS was an effort to reform the global financial structure and to reduce the dependency upon the developed countries. Then there was IBSA dialogue. This was in 2002. This was a dialogue to again establish South-South cooperation and to address the problems of poverty alleviation and lead to social welfare. So this was particularly to stop the interference of developed nations in the matters of developing countries. So these are the relations between India and South Africa. With respect to how the relations have been, so far it has been good when the South African president was in term in the last elections. Even so, now there is a huge amount of cooperation between the two nations because of the nature of their economies and also the historical past that they have been tied up by. Cooperation is mainly on the ground of it being emerging economies. And this means that these ties would see a continuous or a consistent policy and effort from both the nations. Canada says India is the second biggest foreign threat to its democracy. In a parliamentary report by Canada, it has been stated that India is the second biggest foreign threat to its democracy, the first being China and the third being Russia. Now this raises a question and is also a statement that is shocking because India is a state, is a country which honors the democratic ideals constitutionally. Now this is not without any reason. It was in 2023 that a person by the name of Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed, and from that point onwards, the foreign minister expelled a senior Indian diplomat. They also issued a statement which said that a Canadian was killed on the Canadian soil by the Indian agents. Now these were just allegations. There was no evidence of such thing taking place and was due to some Indian agent. Right? So let us look into the matter of what the findings of the report were. So the report, it said that firstly, there have been increased interference by the Indian government on the democratic institutions and processes of the country. The second finding of the report says that India counters the pro-Khalistani efforts. To put into perspective, Khalistan is a state that is desired as a separate homeland for Sikhs, and this is carved out of the regions of provinces of Punjab from Pakistan and India. Thirdly, it says that India has been targeting Canadian politicians, ethnic media, and Indo-Canadian communities. So these are the findings of the report. To understand all of this, let us understand how India and Canada relations have been in the past and how it has turned out to be this way in the recent times. With respect to the past, it has had close relations. So for example, there has been historical ties between India and Canada. And both of them share a history when it comes to being the colonies of the British Empire. And both of them have a parliamentary democracy that is more or less based on the British model. Second, they have a huge amount of trade between them. India is Canada's 10th largest trading partner, and there is a cumulative trade of $10 billion. This is a huge amount. Then, immigration. In the past, it happened in 19th to 20th century. And you must have heard about, in your history books, you must have read about the famous Komagata Maru incident. Komagata Maru incident was one in which a ship which was by the name of Komagata Maru was returned, and it was laden with Indian passengers. And due to this return, it was observed that a many number of passengers were killed. For this kind of an incident, it was the response of racial discriminatory laws prevalent at that point of time in Canada. And this also has led to, in 2016, to the Prime Minister of Canada issuing an apology in the House of Commons. They have apologized to the victims of the incident due to the discriminatory laws present at that point of time. Now, when it comes to education, huge amount of students travel to Canada to avail and receive educational programs. There have been multiple education exchanges, and India nearly sends 320,000 students to Canada every year for further studies. And this also leads to generation of huge amount of fees as revenue for the Canadian government. India and Canada also have shared values, which is based on rule of law, democracy, and conservation of human rights. So it raises a question, how could this democratic country of ours could raise a foreign threat to Canada's government? So it starts in 2023, where Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed. Now, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, to put into perspective the identity of the person, he was a person who was supporting the Khalistani efforts. In 2016, he was issued a red corner notice by the Interpol, which meant that any law enforcement agency could provisionally arrest him. In 2019, India declared him to be a terrorist under the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. He was also a supporter of Referendum 2020. This referendum demanded that Khalistan be provided exclusively. This means that he was posing a sovereign threat towards India. However, it is not without any base that Canada government is saying so. It says that we have information regarding his killing and we think it is the work of Indian agents. But this is without any evidence. There is no evidence of such thing happening nor they have been able to prove it since the time this incident has happened. Come 2024, they released this report. And this raises a serious question in the minds of foreign diplomats that whether this is motivated by the internal domestic politics. It may be so that Canadian government might be vying the support of the Sikh community because Sikh community is present in a large amount there, particularly in the British Columbia province, and they may be vying for their support. But this turns out to be a major foreign policy, and India has rightly countered it by saying that international relations cannot be subservient to the domestic politics of the place. So we have a good understanding of how the situation has turned out to be so bitter in the recent times. Fast Track Immigration Trusted Traveler Program. Now this is a program that has been launched to make it easier for the immigration authorities for identifying travelers who have gained trust of theirs through the database that is being created. Now this is a program which involves immigration. Immigration is something which involves legal movement of a person into a country either to live or to work. And in this context, there has been a new addition in the form of FTI-TTP. This has been launched by the Bureau of Immigration, that is a department under Ministry of Home Affairs. So let us look into what is FTI-TTP. So firstly, it has been launched presently only in the New Delhi airport, that is Indira Gandhi International Airport, and it is only for Indian citizens at present and overseas citizens of India. There is a plan to expand it to the other major airports and also to foreign nationals. What are the features? First, it would provide for a faster immigration clearance, and there would be biometric identification. Also, there would be dedicated lanes for the passengers. So, what are the functions and what it does? So, what it does is basically it will try to biometrically identify the person. Biometric identification, it can be due to your facial or fingerprint recognition. Once this is done, there is already a database filled with the trusted travelers profile, and it tries to match it with the database in real time, and this leads to further immigration clearance with minimal human intervention. Right? So this will automatically increase the amount of people who will pass through the gates in this kind of a scheme. Then what is the process? The process is simple. It basically means that you will scan your passport and your boarding pass at the gates, and once it is biometrically identified and matched with the database and it is established that you are a trusted traveler, then the gates will, or rather the e-gates will open and you can finally enter the country. So this process is dedicated to make the process more easier for immigration. What are the envisaged impacts? So it comes in the form of technological integration. Technological integration, because there is an overlap. One, there is biometric identification, and the second, there is database verification in real time. Right? So there is a huge cost with respect to the technological integration and creation of such kind of database which is complementary or which is in addition to the other countries as well, right? Then there would be an impact on immigration, because it is expected there would be a greater number of foreign tourist arrivals, and it may also boost the overall economic growth. Trusted traveler program would also increase the security within the region that a person is migrating into, and therefore there would be a huge amount of arrivals that can be expected. Then with respect to international relations, it is a practice that is also prevalent in UK under e-gates, and also it is present in US. So collaborating with the list of trusted travelers in both the countries will help in enhancing the global security as well, and also identifying individuals notorious in other countries. So there would be a cooperation when it comes to international relations. There will also be an economic impact, because it is expected that more business would come to India through these gateways, right? However, it is not without concern. There is, of course, the concern of privacy, and also another concern of surveillance, because it is required to store the information. The biometric identification of the travelers are to be stored into a database for real-time verification. There is a concern with respect to surveillance of the travelers. Secondly, the privacy of individuals may also be threatened if this data is not made secure or is not in standards with the international community. So there has to be a uniformity in the privacy guidelines so that the information of individuals is secured. Nevertheless, FTI-TTP is showing a good amount of commitment of the country towards the immigration related issues. So this is a very good step in that regard. Deputy National Security Advisor Vikram Misri is the next Foreign Secretary of India. He is a 1989 Indian Foreign Service officer, and he replaces Vikram Quatra. Let us understand with respect to this exam the importance of the role of a foreign secretary. So firstly, a foreign secretary is a chief diplomatic advisor. As an advisor, he advises the external affairs minister and the prime minister on important issues related to foreign affairs. Right? And he is also responsible for formulation of the foreign policy of India. Right? Then there is management of diplomatic corps, which means that he is the leader of Indian foreign services and is also responsible for any diplomatic missions abroad. Then he is also there for international representation. He represents India in high-level negotiations with the countries and is also responsible for maintaining important multilateral and bilateral relations. Right? Then he is also the person who you go to in case of crisis management, that is protecting India's interest abroad. For example, in case of any warlike situation like Ukraine war or disasters, or even for evacuation like Operation Rahat. That was for the Yemen crisis in 2015. Then there is protocol and ceremonial positions that he has to be present at major international events. So these are the role of a foreign secretary. Let us see the role of deputy NSA. That is the former position of the foreign secretary. First is they assist the national security advisor. The national security advisor is informed by deputy NSA and also along with Prime Minister to understand what the national security situation in India is like and form strategies to counter any security threats. Then there is coordination and implementation. That is coordination between intelligence agencies that take place and is observed by the deputy NSA. Intelligence agencies like RAW, IEB, International Intelligence Bureau, and NIA, and so on. So all of this intelligence is coordinated, and also the intelligence gathered is then put into policy, and the strategy is implemented through the office of deputy NSA. Then there is intelligence and security analysis. That is, they also perform the threat assessment related to any security issue and are also responsible for drafting a long-term strategy to counter it. Then international security cooperation, that is to ward off any terrorist activities and to join in the global counter-terrorism efforts. With respect to crisis management, they inform the decision-making of Prime Minister and NSA for any emergency-like situations. So these are the roles of Foreign Secretary and Deputy National Security Advisor. US government report has criticized the state of religious freedom in India. It has stated that India is a country of particular concern, and it has been included in such a list in which China and Russia were already a part of. So this report has some findings specific to India. So let us see what were the report sayings. First thing is that it has observed that there has been increased amount of anti-conversion laws in India. Secondly, there has been more incidents of hate crimes. It has also observed that India is failing to control the communal violence. And the present government is also building a rhetoric based on religion, right? So this is some specific criticism that the report has said for India. So they have observed that there is a continuous decline in religious freedom of minorities in India, right? The report goes on to place India in the country of particular concern, which India was not a part of earlier. India was added as amongst the 5 nations. Earlier there were 12 nations that were designated as country of particular concern. This year in 2024, 5 more countries were added in which India was also included. And with this, the report has also recommended to the US State Department that there should be sanctions placed on the entities which violate the religious freedom in India, and also there must be some conditional assistance, that is, any type of financial assistance or arms sales to India should be contingent on the entities being controlled that violate religious freedom. Right? So it asks that there must be financial assistance in arms sales only when India is going to improve its ways with regards to these criticisms, right? So what is India's stand on this? India's External Affairs Minister spokesperson has said that this report is deeply biased and that it selectively handpicks incidents that are used to build a preconceived narrative on the religious freedom being violated in India. And that it also tries to usurp what is required with respect to the constitutional values that hold together the social fabric of India. Right? They have also said, the External Affairs Ministry's spokesperson has also said that the report also fails to understand and also questions the right of the legislatures to make certain laws. So this is some report which is deeply biased in nature and something that India would not accept at any cost. This kind of an incident is not something that has happened for the first time. It has happened before as well, where the US government report has stated that there is a gross violation of religious freedom and the US State Department has not taken any action based on its recommendation. And so it is unlikely that US government would go on to blacklist India and stop its trade and other relations with India. Let us see in this context how the US-India relations are. So firstly, there are shared values between India and US that is based on the democracy. It is based on democracy and shared constitutional values like fundamental rights, right? Secondly, there are economic relations, which means India for US is the largest trading partner for India. And there is huge amount of trade happening between the two nations, close to the amount of $129 billion. That is in 2022-2023. And this has risen from $120 billion in 2021 to 2022. This means that US government is trying to engage with India more with respect to the economics of trade. Thirdly, there is international cooperation. International cooperation at various multilateral organizations and also India with respect to UNSC permanent membership. This is supported by the US government, right? So there is international cooperation there as well. Then we have defense cooperation. Defense cooperation, one would be in the form of military exercises. That would be Yudh Abhyas and Vajra Prahar. India and US are also part of important organization, that is Quad and I2U2. So you should find out which other countries are a part of these organizations and write in the comments. Then India and US have signed all the foundational agreements, that is LIMOA, GSOMIA, COMCASA and BECA. Please find out the utility of these foundational agreements that are with respect to defense cooperation between the two nations, right? Then we have space, science and technology. With respect to space, there has been collaboration between NASA and ISRO to build a satellite, a microwave satellite that is having the property of Earth observation. This is by the name of NISAR. And there has been multiple technology collaborations as well, and the latest one would be in the form of critical and emerging technologies between the two national security advisors of the countries. This is built on the new technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, high performance computing, and so on. So we can observe that India-US relations have been quite the backbone of the dialogue between the two nations. And such a US government report is something which may be unsettling for India, and therefore it should be through dialogue and consultation that these misunderstandings should be ironed out. Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Sri Lanka. The External Affairs Minister has gone to Sri Lanka and inaugurated MRCC in Sri Lanka. Now this is based on a port on Sri Lanka, and it was built with a grant given by India to the amount of $6 million. Let us see what is the importance of this visit. Firstly, it would try and enhance the maritime security of the region of Indian Ocean. You can clearly see that this is the Indo-Sri Lanka maritime boundary. This is the outer limit of the exclusive economic zone, and here is where the MRCC is located. So definitely it would be able to perform any maritime rescue operation and also deal with maritime security within the region. So it expands the region in which India can hold its surveillance operations, right? Then one more thing that is important is Colombo. This is a sub-center headquartered at Hambantota Port. Now this Hambantota Port is the same which was leased to China for 99 years, and therefore it also helps us to establish and counter China with respect to its investments and port developments in this region of Sri Lanka. Secondly, there was also important things which were related to this visit. That was houses under Model Village Housing Program were launched virtually by the External Affairs Minister in the areas of Triconomallee and Colombo. So these were the important things related to the visit. Moving forward, what are the prospects when it comes to establishing an MRCC in Colombo? First of all, there would be enhanced maritime security. Now this means that there would be countering of any smuggling or piracy threats because of greater surveillance of the operations. Secondly, there would be improved disaster response. Now, there was a time in 2004 that tsunami had taken a toll on the lives and property of the people. And with respect to establishment of this MRCC, there could be an effort and there could be a coordinated response so that evacuation is done at the earliest and there is a reduction in the loss of life and property. Third is, it strengthens the bilateral relations. Now, as we had talked about it earlier, that Hambantota Port was something that was leased to China for 99 years. This kind of a movement or establishment of MRCC shows that India and Sri Lanka both have close ties with each other. Then there are economic benefits. Economic benefits stem from the overall global economic growth. This is because it will secure the important maritime trade routes. As there will be enhanced security. So there would be more amount of goods and services that pass and would not be subjected to the threats of smuggling and piracy. Then there is a regional stability on the whole in the Indian Ocean region that would take effect because of the establishment of this MRCC, right? Now there are some challenges of this establishment as well, and it links to resource allocation. There is a huge amount of resources that need to be deployed so that such kind of services are always available. These would be in the form of personnel, technology upgradation, and investments. So India and Sri Lanka will have to shell out a good chunk of money so that their social welfare programs are also balanced, and this kind of an initiative is also balanced on the other hand. Then there might be political differences in the future. With the change of political regime, there might be a government who would be pro-China, and this tilt towards China may lead to eroding of efforts for India in the form of MRCC. Then there are technological disparities between the maritime system operations of India and Sri Lanka, and that also has to be ironed out through collaborations. These technological differences. Right? So these are some of the prospects and the challenges that are related to the MRCC that has been established in Sri Lanka. Home Ministry designates Kollam port as immigration check post. Now Kollam port is located on the coast of Kerala. You can see it is here, and it is famous for its sand beaches, which are rich in mineral deposits, heavy minerals like rutile and ilmenite. There are also bauxite minerals that are found in huge deposits there. In the olden days, Kollam port was known as the emporium of trade. In the modern times, it is known as the cashew bowl of India. Now, designating the Kollam port as immigration check post comes as a direction from Bureau of Immigration, which is a department under the Ministry of Home Affairs. This basically looks after the immigration services relating to visas, passport, passenger identification, and so on. So let us have a look at this. So first of all, what is an immigration check post? So when we talk about border management or border control, we have three specific functions to take care of. The first would be customs. Customs meaning that we have to check for cargo, any personal items of the citizens that is being brought into the country, and currency. Apart from this, there are immigration related services. What are those? They are mainly relating to passport services, visa services, and passenger identification. So these are the functions that are provided by the immigration services. Then in the segment of border control, there's also border security. That is to ensure that no illegal weapons are being crossed into the borders of India. Then also to maintain security which is related to the threats to the coastal border. So there has to be maintenance of security. And border security will also entail functions in which it will combine and provide support to the immigration and the customs services, right? So these are the three main functions when it comes to having a good amount of border management and control. Within this sphere, it is this immigration services that comes under the immigration check post, right? And for this, we have Bureau of Immigration, that is under Ministry of Home Affairs, right? So now that we have understood what is an immigration check post, let us also understand what is the significance of Kollam port. As you can see, Kollam port is here. It is on the west coast of India, that is near Arabian Sea. So there is a strategic importance. First, with respect to its location, it opens to the Arabian Sea. Now this provides us with a huge amount of surveillance opportunities, and it also helps us to control any illegal activities that might be taking place there, right? Apart from this, a number of trading ship routes are present here, and therefore there is close proximity to trade routes. So this is one of the strategic importance when it comes to designating immigration check post in Kollam. Then there is trade and commerce. So a number of foreign ships arrive here. And then it also leads to more movement of people along this port. And therefore, there is an expected increase in trade and also overall economic growth. Then there is also a significance which is related to the regional development of this place. Within this area, there would be a boost given to the infrastructure. Infrastructural growth would be something that is observed, and therefore it would also lead to growth of ancillary services which are related to the immigration process. Therefore, there would be overall boost to this region of Kollam. We also have security and surveillance. That is, there would be enhanced maritime security in the region, and there would be coordinated efforts of border control. That is, immigration services would also be included, and there would be a coordinated effort, and there would be a greater level of surveillance when it comes to notorious people crossing the borders and coming into India for nefarious purposes, right? So this is the significance. Next, what is the implications? What are the implications of designating Kollam port as an immigration check post? First of all, it aligns with our maritime security and economic policies. Maritime security we can observe with respect to the Sagar initiative. This is security and growth in the Indian Ocean region. Now this has a role in establishing maritime security for the region of Indian Ocean. And it promotes all such initiatives and collaborations by various countries and with respect to the various ports of India, so that this kind of security can be given. It also aligns with the blue economy that India envisions. Within blue economy, India envisions that there must be extraction of marine resources that are present within the waters of India, and also there should be some fisheries which are to be imported or exported. There must be certain gradation through sustainable fishing. Apart from this, this immigration check post would also help in establishing coastal tourism. That is, people would visit this port just to have a tour of this place. Then we have international trade. It is expected that the trade routes, since the shipping trade routes would be much more secure and there would be influx of people who are coming in and doing business with India, so there would be a huge amount of trade benefits that India would derive due to increased business. There would also be a socio-economic impact within the region. Why? This is because there would be, as there would be more people of foreign origin, or there would be more travelers who are interested in coming here as a tourist, there would be some amount of demographic change that would gel with the people there and also produce some kind of social cohesion within the community. So there would be social impact of this designation as well. Then immigration and border management. Now there would be coordinated efforts. Now earlier there were no immigration services related to Kollam. Now since there are immigration services, it would provide a coordinated efforts for all the border function. And it will help in enhancing the border security even when it comes to the coastal landmass of India, right? So this is basically an important step with respect to the immigration issues, and it also provides a gateway to enter India and improve the overall economic growth. Pakistan delegation in Jammu and Kashmir to inspect power projects under IWT, that is Indus Water Treaty. Now, Indus Water Treaty is one of the brightest points of India-Pakistan relationship. And recently, 5-member delegation from Pakistan came to India in the Kishtwar district of Jammu and Kashmir, and it was there to inspect the hydroelectric projects along with the Indian representatives and the World Bank neutral experts. They were particularly there to inspect Ratle hydroelectric project and Pakaldul Dam on the Marsudar River of Chenab. Marsudar River is a tributary of the Chenab River. So let us understand what this Indus Water Treaty is all about. So in the beginning, Indus Water Treaty was not there after the partition. The partition happened in 1947, and after that it was felt that there was a constant dispute with respect to the water sharing between India and Pakistan considering the Indus River systems. So it was observed that there would be no resolution unless there is a dialogue. So World Bank comes in between, and in 1954 it mediates and says that look, you both should have a water sharing agreement amongst yourself, otherwise you would be involved in disputes, and this would definitely have an effect on your bilateral relations. So in 1960, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru along with President Ayub Khan of Pakistan, they signed a treaty by the name of Indus Water Treaty. So it happened in 1960, and post that in 1980s there was a permanent Indus Commission that was also launched. It would be fascinating to know that there were no disputes, major disputes, despite multiple political tensions even after the Indus Water Treaty was signed. In the 1980s, when the permanent Indus Commission was there, it was required that both the countries appoint a commissioner that would look into the issues of the other countries and also come up to a resolution. So it was a resolution for any kind of dispute that would arise from the water sharing agreements. Now, this was about how it was signed and what were the procedures under it. Now, what is Indus Water Treaty? Indus Water Treaty demarcates the Indus water systems into western and eastern rivers. The western rivers are Indus, Chenab, Jhelum, and the eastern rivers are Beas, Ravi and Satluj. These are the rivers of Indus system, and the western rivers were given to the Pakistani side, and the eastern rivers were given to the Indian side. That is, they have exclusive rights over these rivers. With respect to the western rivers, for India, there was a limited use that was established for consumptive purposes. Consumptive purposes meaning there would be consumption of water, maybe in the form of agricultural projects or with respect to drinking water. And also there was unlimited use that was allowed with respect to non-consumptive purposes. What do you mean by non-consumptive purposes? It means that there could be establishment of power generation projects. There could be some navigation that does not consume water. That is, it does not affect the volume of water. There is no water that is being withdrawn, right? So this was the Indus Water Treaty, and by this, it so happened that close to 30% of waters were allocated to India by this arrangement, and 70% happened to be allocated to Pakistan. So under this Indus Water Treaty, there's always a dispute resolution mechanism, and there is a understanding with respect to Permanent Indus Commission, which says that there must be sharing of hydrological data year on year, and this would also help in building transparency and trust between the two countries with regards to water sharing. What we have observed here, so these are the three rivers. This is Indus, Jhelum, Chenab. This were allocated to the Pakistani side. And we have Beas, Ravi and Satluj that were given to the Indian side, right? So this is how it was distributed under the Indus Water Treaty. Now, what is India and Pakistan's stand on this? India and Pakistan have gone for various kind of dispute resolution. Under the Indus Water Treaty, whenever there is a dispute with regards to the water sharing agreement, there is two mechanisms. One would be establishment of court of arbitration, or they could also use another route that would come into a form of a neutral technical expert, right? So this was also used in the case of Ratle hydroelectric project, where construction of such a hydroelectric project was also allowed. Pakistan has a doubt. Pakistan says that construction of such hydroelectric projects would affect Pakistan's security. Why? Because there might be a time during political tensions between the two countries that India would utilize these hydroelectric projects and create a flood or drought-like situations in Pakistan. But this is something which has not happened so far, and it shows the integrity with which India honors this Indus Water Treaty. Now, what is the significance of Indus Water Treaty for India-Pakistan relations and regional stability? The first is, it is something that provides a framework for water sharing. Now, what this Indus Water Treaty does is it provides a structural framework along which the distribution of waters is governed, and therefore it provides complete clarity to both of these nations, and therefore irons out any kind of dispute that may take place. Then there is conflict prevention. Now, since there have been no major water disputes, even when there were rising political tensions between both the countries, it holds testament to this fact that there would be no major conflicts related to waters of Indus. and the credit for that would go to Indus Water Treaty itself, right? Then there also is provision of regional stability. Now, water is a conduit for economic growth. Why? Because it provides for the welfare of citizens through agriculture and also drinking water. Both of these are an important part of the economy when it comes to India and Pakistan. So it provides for such kind of regional stability. Otherwise, it would be something that would create problem as far as the population along this region is concerned. Right? There's also an economic impact. Economic impact comes in the form of various kinds of hydroelectric projects that India has constructed, and India is also trying to go for these hydroelectric projects so that it becomes a power generation source for the northern India. With respect to India, there's hydroelectric projects. With respect to Pakistan, there have been successful irrigation projects that have been launched. Like there is an example of Tarbela Dam. This feeds into the agricultural fields of Pakistan, right? Then there's also diplomatic relations. The diplomatic relations have also been established as a channel through the Permanent Indus Commission, right? So it opens the door for dialogue and negotiations, even when there are some kind of warlike situation or political tensions that may be happening, right? So negotiations and dialogue. So in conclusion, Indus Water Treaty stands as a testament to the relations between India and Pakistan when it comes to sharing of Indus water systems. So going forward, India and Pakistan should maintain this position of sharing of hydrological data with each other and maintaining as much transparency as possible. They should also use the dispute resolution mechanism that is within the precincts of this treaty, right? There might be some issues which may arise in the future based on the climate change and the increasing population within this region. So there must be some kind of modification or some kind of dialogue that should also take place when it comes to sharing of the waters. Indo-USA NSA Meet, that is the national security advisors of both the countries have met. Now this is over the technology collaboration between the two nations. In 2022 May, President Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they both signed a US initiative for critical and emerging technologies. Now this technology was something which was to further build on the strategic technology partnership between the nations and therefore also build upon categorically with respect to the defense industrial partnerships between the governments, the private sector and the academic institutions. So this basically focuses on co-production and co-development of innovative technologies. It also focuses on creating innovative bridges. Innovative bridges meaning that there should be transfer of some kind of technological knowledge which is innovative in nature. From the point of view of international relations, we must understand that whoever is the superpower with respect to these emerging technologies would be the person or would be the country which would be at the most powerful position. So now let us see what were the critical and emerging technology that were decided in the meet for further collaboration. So one was artificial intelligence, defense, space, high performance computing, and collaboration in critical minerals. Now you can see the collaborations within this emerging technology is definitely something that any country would like to get a hold of. And especially when it comes to research, US and India collaborating within this sphere would definitely create a huge amount of strategic technology partnership. Strategy technological partnership. Which would be gaining, it would be gaining from the track 1.5 and track 2 diplomacy between the two nations. That is a diplomacy or a track diplomacy, meaning that there would be collaborations between the private sector and the private sector of both the nations, right? And there would be collaboration between academic institutions as well, and government would also be involved within the 1.5. Within the track 2 diplomacy, it would just be the private sector, that is the non-governmental. So there are opportunities with adopting the whole part of governance when it comes to technology partnership. So this is something which is new, and it also shows a strategic shift between India and US relations. So what are the key technology areas of collaboration till now? First has been, this is mainly for the 2023 meet. So these NSA, that is the National Security Advisors of both the countries, are required to meet every year. So in 2023, there was a meet, and since then, there has been collaboration in artificial intelligence, and close to $2 million grant has been given towards this purpose, right? There has been this area of collaboration. Then there is quantum computing. There has been establishment of US-India coordination mechanism. Right? This has been established so that the researchers can collaborate. This is mainly between the private and the public authorities. Then there is collaboration in advanced wireless technologies. This is launched as Open Radio Access Network. What this provides is access to 5G technologies without having any over-reliance on the different countries, especially China, which is something that is an adversary for both US and India. Then there has been collaboration with respect to defense technology and innovation as well, which comes in the form of Indus X. That is India and US, which will build upon the defense ecosystem that has to be accelerated between both the countries. This would be built on the private-private partnership and also defense startups. Right? So the key technology areas of collaboration have been in this. And what this initiative of ICT holds is that there should be trusted startups, trusted private sectors, right, from both the nations that should build upon the value chain, that is the supply value chain between all of these technologies. It should be the responsibility of these trusted startups, and the government will provide the channel for coordination, right? So this is how it is going to be taken forward. Now, what are the impact of this kind of collaboration and what are the future prospects? The first impact comes in the form of private sector employment. Now, what are the impact and future prospects of such a collaboration? The first comes in the form of private sector involvement. That is, the private sectors of both these nations would get involved in creating value chains. And they would also be collaborating, and this would be something that would be called as an innovation bridge. Or another term that has been used that is depicting the involvement of the nation's private sector, that is, it is a form of innovative handshake, which means both the countries would be contributing to creating innovations within this emerging technologies, right? Then there is tech value chain partnership. The values would be contributed with respect to the supply chain. And this is something that has to be taken care by the private sectors. Then there would be commercial synergy as well. It is expected that even the venture capitalists from both of these nations would go on and contribute to each other's startups in their domains, right? So basically, this kind of collaboration means that India and US are looking to forward the relationships they have harbored till now, and also build upon the emerging technologies that they want to build strategically upon. US has always been in a technology denial regime, which means that it does not want to share the technological innovations that it has made progress in. But this shows a strategic shift of US with respect to India. And this is something that must be treasured in the relationship between India and US. India eyes Mongolia for key minerals to bypass Chinese route. Now, India is eyeing Mongolia for key minerals like coal, coking coal, and copper. There are certain other minerals that are also present in huge amount in Mongolia, and India is trying to procure it, right? So there has been a build on friendship that is on the basis of resource extraction and also resource efficiency. But there is also one more angle to it, that India wants to avoid the Chinese route. That is, it wants to have some kind of resource sufficiency which is away from the imports from China. So let us have a look. Why are these key minerals in demand? So the first thing is, there has been a transition to clean energy. So transition to clean energy would require that we must have some conventional sources of energy generation so that it can help with this kind of transition. And further, there must be minerals that are useful to produce such technologies that can harness renewable form of energy, right? So this is one. Then India does not have enough resources, so they are in demand. And the third would be the attempt to diversify its basket of procurement of minerals, right? So just to have an example with us, let us consider three minerals. One is coking coal, copper, and rare earth minerals, right? With respect to its use, the uses would be as follows. For coking coal, we have the demand in steel industries. It is used in the blast furnace. For copper, it is essential part of electronics and electrical wiring. Rare earth is particularly important to create technologies that are are able to harness renewable sources of energy. Right? So these are the major uses of these three kind of minerals. But with respect to China, how much of these minerals are being imported into India, and this would create import dependency on China. Now, coking coal is imported around for 30 to 40% requirement of Indian usage. For copper, the figure stands around 30 to 35%. And for rare earth, 90%. That is something that we need to transition to the clean energy. We need 90% of such mineral, and this would be procured from China. We do not have any other alternative, right? So we are trying to build upon it through Mongolia. So this is one of the reasons why was Mongolia chosen. First of all, there is rich mineral reserve within Mongolia. It is abundant in such resources. There's abundant form of minerals in the form of gold, copper, uranium, coking coal, and so on. Right? And another fact is that most of these resources are untapped. Untapped meaning that there is no one who has extracted from most of these fields of minerals. Tawan Tolgai. This is a mine in Mongolia that is famous for its untapped coal deposits. Right? So India is trying to leverage this rich mineral reserve of Mongolia in this. Then there is geopolitical strategy. India wants to move away from the dependence on China. And we want to eliminate this kind of independence, and we also want to diversify the source with which we are extracting our key minerals. Right? So this is a geopolitical strategy that we are going for by choosing Mongolia over China. Then there is proximity to key markets. That is, Mongolia is in the central part of Asia, and it also opens to various kind of markets through trade routes and shipping routes where we want to have our trade in. So within your geography part of GS, you would have learnt about the factors that are responsible for location of markets, right? So this is also one instance where the raw material existence is close to the market, and this would have an effect on the logistics of the trade. Then we have investment and collaboration opportunities. Now, Mongolia is a country which is open to foreign investment in minerals, and India therefore wants to establish some point of joint ventures between the public authorities of the both countries so that they can develop the necessary infrastructure. Right? So there is conducive policy as well. Right? Conducive policy for extraction of raw materials. And then there is alternative trade routes. Now, most of the routes that are utilized for trade of key minerals is dominated by China. And India wants to avoid these routes for the simple reason of creating stability and security within its economics and geopolitical sphere. So, as we can see from the map, that there could be utilization of trade routes. Now here is Mongolia, here is Vladivostok in Russia, and this kind of a trade route between Chennai and Vladivostok can be utilized, right? And also there is INSTC, that is International North-South Transport Corridor, that can be utilized to avoid Chinese-dominated routes. So this is a certain aspect of geopolitics that India is trying to deploy and have a secure resource extraction and resource sufficiency, and also to create a good relation with a Central Asian country. So this was all for the recitals for this month. Thank you.